Hello, everyone. It is almost time for our amazing vampire and werewolf packed webinar about how to kill zombies, sidestep vampires, and avoid social scares. We are going to be waiting just a couple minutes for any other folks to join in, but we are excited to have you guys all here today. And if you have questions that are just burning, maybe it's what you should dress up for this weekend, I don't know. Our special guest today has the most amazing costume I have ever heard of, ever, for a utility communicator. So we'll explain that in a minute. But hope you have your candy handy to get your energy level high this afternoon. We are excited to have all of you with us today. So if you would like to, you can jump into the chat box and you can send notes to either me, you can send notes to Amy, you can send notes to the rest of the attendees here. We are excited to have all of y'all with us. Let's see. I'm going to start it out with a little note to everybody to welcome y'all to the party. Let's see, I know we had a bunch of folks that were going to be with us today. Oh, and we've got some happy Halloweens coming in already. We are happy to have all of you guys here today. We're going to be talking about how to kill zombies, sidestep vampires, and avoid social scares, something I think all of us want to be able to manage, not just this week in the pre-Halloween festivities, but when we're in the middle of the night wondering, wait, did I respond to that post on social media? Things can be a little dicey sometimes. And I am very excited that with me today, we have the amazing Amy Blanc. If you have not had a chance to meet Amy before, I was super excited when she joined Pioneers family a few months ago. Amy has been with electric cooperatives and championing our story for 9 years, I believe, before joining Pioneer. She's a certified cooperative communicator, and she has an amazing way of sharing the co-op story. And Amy, I have to have you share this. You told me one of your Halloween costumes yesterday. You didn't send me pictures, which I got to work on this with you. But what
I got to go back
Halloween costume?
I got to go back and find the pictures, Megan. But I was a retired Capital Credit one year for Halloween.
That worked.
So I basically dressed up.
Mind.
I basically dressed up as the old man. I had a beard on and walked with a cane and a little vest, and then I put money all over myself, like paper money. Nobody got it. I mean, so I had to explain to everybody, well, I'm old and I have money. So I'm like retired. Not that retired people are very old with long gray beards per se. But yeah, so that was my costume one year. Nobody got it, but I thought it was fun, and I will find those pictures for you.
I think that is wonderful. If any of the attendees have had an amazing costume idea for the co-op, for their utility, please put it in the chat box so that we can learn from each other, because man, I mean, I've seen the kids dressed up as line workers. That's always nice. This year there was the picture going around about the kid dressed up as a transformer. That was also nice. But now I want to see capital credits. I think it's gotta come. This is gonna be great. So, all right. We can go ahead and dive in now. Thank you guys all for being here with us today. I'm really excited to talk about social scares because it doesn't have to be scary, right? You're not alone. That's the power of cooperatives, whether you're a telco, if you're electric, we're all one big family and we all share ideas together, and that's what makes us stronger as a co-op nation. So as we dive into this topic, I always like to start just by thinking about how the social landscape is changing, right? Because nothing stays the same. It's one of my big scares with social media. Every time I hear about a new channel, I'm like, no, not another one, you know, then they come back from the dead sometimes. It's just, it's crazy. So it's good for us to kind of check in, and Amy is going to walk us through some of these social changes right now. So we kind of set the scene for frights or ways that you can avoid frights. But before we do that, I know a lot of y'all already have the chat box up, which is great. We're just curious. It's always nice to get a feel for everybody here. How many hours do you spend managing social channels every week? think about it. It might take you a second, because I know a lot of the time we're just thinking, what should we write about this week? What should we do? Or how can I avoid being too defensive in my response to this post? But let us know, put it in the chat box. It's nice to kind of keep tabs on how much time we invest in this. And hopefully the amount of time that you spend on your social channels will go down as you learn some ways to manage your content more effectively. So with that, Amy, why don't you walk us through some of these social changes and how folks should be thinking about social media right now?
Sure. Well, let's jump on in. To start with, we have a quote here from Melissa Shaw with Pioneer. She is our VP of Digital Communications. And Melissa says, when creating content, keep consumers in mind. What do they care about? Why should they care about what you have to say? Strive to create meaningful and engaging conversations. So we're going to talk about the new newsfeed, dropping reach, and channel check.
Always exciting.
Yeah, so here we go. Here's some data that was pulled from this past April, and no surprise, Facebook is still on top, right? YouTube, 81%. I don't know about you, but my daughter likes to watch random kids' YouTube videos all the time, and some of them are very weird, but she likes them. Facebook is still way up there. It's still one of the most social channels that's more broadly used, and then Instagram coming in hot at 40%. And then some of our other ones that you'll see sprinkled in there, Twitter, Snapchat, LinkedIn, Pinterest, that's my favorite, and TikTok.
Isn't it funny? We all have our favorites, but what really blows me away is that TikTok and Twitter are like neck and neck.
Yep.
With their reach right now.
Crazy. I think TikTok's going to sneak past Twitter here any day now.
It's not going to take long. Yep.
All right, organic reach. This is the content that you're posting on your page, right? You're not boosting it. You're not putting any ad dollars towards it. It's your posts that you're writing and putting on your channels. From 2007 to this year, only 5.2% of Facebook followers are actually seeing those organic posts.
Yeah, it used to be more, right? Like you used to be able to see a ton of content and you didn't have to worry. Like the reach was fantastic. It was like, great. I had a friend at Umatilla Electric tell me last week, he said, they tricked us. they got us using Facebook and using social media, and then the reach just bottomed out, but we need it now. So,
but important to realize. So Megan, tell us about the newsfeed. How do we get to people and not be that in that 5.2% that people are seeing?
See, it's hard. I mean, they're only seeing that many. And I remember it's been a couple years ago now, but Facebook released a stat that has stayed with me. It haunts me every time I go to check my newsfeed. It says that then this is again, like 4 years ago. So there's more now, but there are at least 1,500 potential posts that you could see when you start scrolling through your feed. And that's terrifying. That's too much content. So I think it helps to kind of understand how the news feed works. And a lot of folks should know this by now, but you're going to see friends and family first, those initial connections that you have, right? And then there's 4 things that kind of factor into where you rank in the news feed. Who's posting the content, when you're posting, the type of content, and how folks interact with it, how they respond to your content, right? So just to explain how that works, again, you're going to see friends and family first, and then you can prioritize some businesses, right? We always tell folks, I know Pioneer Social, Amy, your team works with folks to make sure that their page profiles are complete so that you can be seen first, because it'll also, if your page information isn't all there, it puts you down on the newsfeed, which is nobody wants to be put down. We don't want you put down. We want to raise you up. So who posts is part of that. When you post really matters too, right? We have a whole presentation about how to be human in a digital world. And a lot of that is thinking like your audience, right? When you post, and if you don't post for a really long time, cobwebs kind of grow in your feed, and it all kind of goes downhill too. So keep that in mind. And then I really liked this. Now, Adam Mosseri, he is now Instagram CEO, which is still in the Facebook family, but he's the former head of newsfeed at Facebook. And he said that page posts that generate conversations between people, that's going to get pushed up higher in the feed, which I think makes a lot of sense. Content that's engaging, right? You want to spark comments. You want to not just state facts, but ask questions, really get conversations going. And at Pioneer Social, Amy's team and Melissa, they always tell folks, our purpose is to educate, entertain, and inform, right? And if you keep those three things in mind, it helps you create content that will spark those conversations, that is engaging, and really helps folks connect with you. The last bit of newsfeed, the factors that help you, that I think is really important to talk about, is how folks interact with your content, right? They can be passive or they can be active. If people share your content, that is great. And I often will tell folks, I would rather someone share our content than like our content, because it's weighed more. Also, if you are able to talk to someone, this is a great example from our friends at Clearwater Power in Idaho. So they have updates about a power outage. Judy asks a question and Clearwater Power responds. That's great, but it's better, and newsfeed likes you more and pushes you higher up if you start to have conversations between people on your page. So something to keep in mind. Those are active interactions. Folks can also be kind of passive, giving you a like, giving you a love, which is nice. I think it's interesting, Amy, longer replies rank higher. If people say more than LOL, it helps, and your content will get higher on the newsfeed, which is nice. And I share a lot of content on Messenger. I don't know do you do this, Amy? Have you ever found yourself like messaging someone something?
Yeah. Yep. All the time.
Yeah, because I don't want to share it with everybody. Maybe this is a message that I sent to Joel and Brenda, and I'm like, guys, you got to see this. And I just sent it to 2 people in Messenger, but because of that link ends up getting higher in the newsfeed because I took the time to share it in Messenger. It means more. So those are the kinds of interactions that folks can have with your content that can really drive value for you. So now to the scary part, zombies. Amy, nobody likes zombies.
Nope. That one's pretty ugly.
No, I mean, yeah, we should have dressed him up as a retired capital credit zombie that you can't find their address, and they're like, "What do we do?" That could have been. That's a whole other. We could go down a whole rabbit hole with that, but that's okay. So when we talk about zombies, at least when I talk about zombies, Amy, I know you and I were talking about this last week, and you're like, "Really, zombies?" And I was like, "Yeah," because it's content that's dead, that still pops up on the newsfeed because folks have shared it. Folks have commented on it, right? So sometimes a utility will, especially if there's an outage, if there's an emergency and you have a lot of content that you're sharing in a short period of time, people will share individual posts. And then when they have an update, they share it again on a separate post. And it gets lost, because you'll see some of this content, like one post where they had 77 members remaining without power. 5 people liked that, but the post where they had 300 members without power, it was shared 3 times. So it'll be seen before you see the 77, right? You just have to be careful about starting all over again. You want to use those responses, those interactions that you have gained through your social, interactions, and the feed, the bump that you've gotten on newsfeed. You want to use that, right? So instead of posting your own stuff each time, and new content every time, use the posts, use the traction that you've got. Here's some examples from Bluebonnet Electric in Texas, where they said, hey, this is what's happening. And then they kept updating the same post, right? The same with Snohomish, where they just say, hey, outage update here, outage update here. Some folks will put in, if they have a scheduled power outage, for example, and it gets canceled, don't put a new post about that, right? Update the original post. And I really liked the way that Lass and our friends in California, they updated a post with the date and time too. Instead of just saying update, they actually said, okay, we're going to make sure folks know exactly when these things are happening.
Yep.
And that's really,
you got to remember that a user on scrolling on Facebook, you maybe posted this 3 hours ago, but they're seeing it, 3 hours later, and they don't know when you did that update. Or if you don't update your original post like this, the only image they may see from you is we have 300 power, or we have 300 members without power. And you may be only down to 12 by that point, but they're thinking, oh my gosh, there's all these people without power. So this is the best way to handle it, Megan, for sure.
yeah. Now we were talking about this. Are zombies in every social channel, Amy?
No. This applies to Facebook. This is a great rule of thumb for Facebook, but for Twitter, right? We can't go back and edit our tweets. And so Twitter is one space, and it's just a different social media platform anyways. It's used a little differently, where you can go in and make those updated tweets. And especially for your reporters out there in your radio. I know a lot of folks believe that, well, I don't know if Twitter's the right place for me. For outage updates, Twitter is pretty awesome. And that's where your local media is going to be at too. So
that's really true.
Just a side note there with the little zombie and little Tweety birds. Use Twitter a little bit differently for that, for the outage.
Yeah, know your audience. Know your audience. And Jack Dorsey did something right. You don't have to worry about zombies on Twitter just yet. All right, so that's fighting zombies. Hopefully you start thinking about zombies now every time you start posting about outages, and you're like, I can't, I've got to defeat the zombies. We also want to talk to you about vampires. We all know them. You may not have called them vampires before, but they want to drink your blood. Sometimes you have folks complaining all the time, and I hear you. I feel you. I wish I could give you candy, because it is hard when you have folks complain on your social channels a lot. But there are ways that you can transform folks that are complaining into brand champions, right? Without them draining all of your energy. We want to encourage you. The most important thing to do to avoid vampires before they even become vampires, because vampires spawn, Amy. So right. if you leave one person alone, then somebody else that's not thrilled with the utility could get to them, and then they transform them into a vampire too. Anyhow, the first thing to do is to listen for creaks. Right? This is a spooky movie. We're getting into the season. Couple ways that you can listen when these vampires might be forming, right? Hopefully, this is old school, but guys, it's free. Google alerts, right? Do you have a Google alert set up for your utility? I really hope you do, but start there so that you can start to listen and know when folks are talking about you, not just on social media, but across the web. Fun fact, I had an ex-boyfriend who created a whole web page about me. I found it on Google Alerts. See, it's helpful. Set them up for yourself as well. You never know. Also check social channels like Yelp. Yelp is not just for food reviews, right? Which is what I always thought it was, because that's how I used it. But there are folks that review utilities on Yelp. I don't know. Now, Amy, you worked at 2 different utilities for a total of 9 years. Did you ever find reviews like this lurking in channels that you weren't thinking about?
Here and there, I would find some, yes. Mainly the Google reviews is what was utilized, and nobody was monitoring that before. I was a communicator there. And just with how easy it is to Google a business and then say what you think on there, it's very easy for members to get on there and do that. Now, it's not a bad thing that people can get on there, right? But yeah, you want to pay attention to all those different channels so that way you can respond appropriately.
Yeah, I agree. And we're going to explain a little bit more about that in a minute. But just being aware of the channels that are out there and starting to listen. Other free services mention you pay for, but you get one for free. and Mention's fantastic. I get news articles from all over the country about Pioneer through Mention. So using those channels, and also Amy, your team at Pioneer Social is really good about listening. Can you explain what you guys do?
Sure. So our Pioneer Social team, we have our own program that we use to schedule and post our social media posts, but we also use it for social listening and monitoring. Super helpful. So this was just a recent one on Talquin Electric Cooperative's wall. They're down in Florida, and somebody had posted this on their Facebook wall. And we, utilizing our Pioneer Social platform, we liked it and we sent that on to the communicator. Sometimes you don't always catch those things. I don't know about you, but I was pretty dang busy most days doing a million different things in one day. I was not always monitoring my Facebook. So that feature is super helpful.
Yeah.
Yeah, and here's another one that's also part of social listening and monitoring, is that you can see a user's history. So you can go back and see, like, okay, is this somebody that's been that creepy little ghost on my page for quite a while? Or is this somebody that this is the first time they've ever mentioned something negative or positive? And you can decide what to do with that. Maybe you feel like you need to respond to them in a certain way. You can go into your billing software and maybe look back at your contact history too, and see what else is there. There may be other things that you didn't know about. So that's also a very super helpful tool.
Yeah, I mean, it's helpful if someone has always loved you to kind of know that they're a big cheerleader. Like we
Yeah.
at Pioneer, we've got some big cheerleaders in our community, but also you could know, this person complains all the time. We've tried saying this, this, and this to them, obviously not getting through. And then you can figure out a game plan for addressing them in a new way, or talk to them maybe in a different channel to find a way to help turn them from someone that's draining your energy to someone that's championing your utility on social. So listening is so important. And I think it's something that we all need to be reminded of, because we do get busy. I also was welcomed into the world of Google My Business not too long ago, and went through all the stats, just like Amy was saying. It's a lot to take in, but it's free. And I don't know if you have smart speakers at home. My daughter keeps asking for one, and we're like, no. But more and more folks are going to be using smart speakers or using Google. We've gotten used to the idea that people are not going to go to your Facebook page necessarily to get information from you, or they're not going to go to your website all the time unless they have a task to do, but they want you to come to them, right? Google's kind of the same way. They're skipping a step. They don't want to go to your website to complain about something. They don't want to call your member services center to complain. They're just going to complain or ask a question on Google. So it is so important to set up your Google My Business account. It took me, I don't know, for Pioneer, it took me maybe 2 hours to kind of figure everything out, how it all worked together, and then fill in. It didn't take that long to fill in our information and get pictures, but I spent about 2 hours just getting everything kind of set up. Amy, for you, how long did it take for your co-ops to get Google My Business set up?
Right. So it was quite a while ago when I did my co-op in Colorado that I worked at. And so I'm sure they've updated the process now. But back then, you would go to Google and you'd say, claim my business. And they actually mailed me a postcard in the mail. And I remember telling all the gals at the front desk, I was like, please make sure that you don't just throw away this random Google piece of mail, because we got so much mail, right? I was like,
Yeah.
this, make sure it gets to me. And so anyways, I went through the steps. It wasn't that bad. One thing that I do remember is that YouTube is also tied to Google, right? So I wanted to make sure that my Google business account here that you see on Megan's screen also tied my YouTube account correctly. So I made sure to do those steps in the right order instead of just creating a random, Pioneer at Google or gmail.com or whatever type of
Yeah,
YouTube account. So there's some steps to go through, but it's important
there are.
and free. You just got to get through it.
Yeah, and this is increasingly how your consumers, and especially for telcos, and folks, electric folks getting into broadband, this is how folks are going to be looking for you and trying to find out what you offer. Very important to have your Google My Business account. We're so excited about spreading the word about this because so many folks don't have their knowledge graphs, which is what is highlighted here on the far right. That's your knowledge graph. That's what drives all of the search functionality. Whenever anyone searches for something, if you haven't filled out the information there, Google doesn't know if you offer those services or not, right? So we have a webinar January 19th next year. Yes, we're already planning for next year, which is terrifying in and of itself. But we have a webinar and we hope you guys will join us for that, just walking through the steps for Google My Business.
Yep. And we have a good comment in the chat, Megan, from Nicole. And she said, you can't turn off the ability for people to ask questions via the Google Business page. And she's had experience with people trying to report outages there. So it's those Google alerts can be really helpful. And if you get yourself established with Google My Business, you should get email notifications every time somebody reviews and makes a comment on Google. And so it's easier to stay on top of as well.
Yeah, Nicole, that is a wonderful point, and hugs to you, my friend. You've got to be having fun this week. Anyone that knows Nicole knows how much she loves this time of year. I would say my friend Bonnie at Coleman Electric, she said what she does for her Google My Business account to make sure she knows when folks are talking about things is she uses messages.google.com and she gets them. She doesn't even wait for emails. She gets them as text messages anytime folks are talking about her and talking about Coleman Electric in Alabama. So I would look into setting that up as well so that you don't have any delays whatsoever in responding. And you have a place where you're able to put information about your utility on Google My Business in that knowledge graph. Make sure you clearly say, this is how you report outages, right? You could even, you have a space for products and services that really pops out in the knowledge graph. Right here, you can see Pioneer Studio and Pioneer Social on our knowledge graph, but I bet you could set up one of those products to spotlight how to, it's not set up for this, but I bet you could, to spotlight outage reporting and how to do that, use this knowledge graph, really use Google My Business because that is increasingly how your members want to get information about you. So if there's other ways that you listen, please, please, please put that in the chat function. Again, we are all learning from each other. That is the power of our network. So if you have a tool that you have found that is super helpful, please share it with the whole gang, right? It's one of the powers of being cooperatives. So we've talked about listening for creaks, but what do you do if you hear something, Amy?
You do not ignore the message. There's just nothing worse than somebody, even if it's a mean comment, or however you decide to word it, always respond to your members. You don't ever want to just have silence. And then other members are online and they're saying, oh, Coleman Electric Cooperative didn't even respond to that person. And you're going to have other people seeing that. So don't ignore messages. And always respond in kind.
I love Vincent's face here, but have you ever heard people talk about, at the utilities you've worked for, talk about someone complains, oh, I'm going to call them. Is that okay? Or is that a little bit creepy?
That's a little bit creepy. I mean, I think it's a good idea just to respond. You don't want to get into a tit for tat kind of thing. You know what I mean, with the member, especially online. So having a nice canned message that kind of gives a conclusion to it too and doesn't allow a conversation to continue is great. So the response that Coleman Electric Cooperative gave here is a really good one. So
nice. All right. So don't ignore it and don't be creepy. I like it. And then I thought we could just trade some ghost stories. If y'all have any stories that you want to share in the chat, please let us know. But we thought it'd be fun to show how things can go badly and when things work really well. This is a photo that is near and dear to my heart because it was shared through a national association and they had it in their list of pictures. I don't know why, but I saw several utilities use it. And I tell you, he's making a gesture. He's not really, but it looks like he's making a gesture that is not one that you would have in polite company, right? Be aware of the pictures that you're using and make sure that they don't inadvertently show something else. Instead, try to have content that will really connect with folks. I love this. And this is an old image, but it just makes me happy every time I see this guy's face. It's stock image. Okay, well, I've seen his face before. But I love the message that Grant PUD added to this. This is Bob. Bob wore his life jacket. Bob didn't drown. Be like Bob. Don't ruin your day. I mean, it's a safety message, right? And the last one, this was a safety message too, right? But this is a fun safety message that just connects with folks in a much better way. Always check your connections if you are going to be streaming live at an event. I've had my videos come across sideways before. A lot of folks had that happen early in the days of Facebook Live, but then just make sure that your connection is strong. Make sure that you do some test runs before you stream a big announcement, maybe, especially this is a big announcement about STEM trailers going out to the schools and they didn't have a good enough connection and folks weren't able to see what was happening. So just practice a little bit. The language we use can also be scary. And I'm going to be speaking tomorrow to folks in Georgia about this, but it's good to keep in mind that your members are not you. They cannot speak your jargon. They don't know the names of your substations, or at least I hope they don't. They shouldn't need to know the names of substations, right? This is an outage post that came out and it was tied into another system called Nixle. And none of the words made sense. I had a friend messaged me saying that they had to use Google Maps to figure out what the post even meant, right? Which is scary. We shouldn't expect our members to do that. We have to use language that is clear, simple, easy to understand. Otherwise, you will scare folks and you'll sound like you're way up here, right? We want to be together with our members, right? That's the power of working together. We're all in this together. And if you speak as if they should know what you're talking about and you don't help them understand, it separates you from them. And that's kind of scary.
Yep. And Megan, I think both you and I had talked about that as co-op communicators, we both had a big map of our service territory, right? Up by our desk, with all the different substations everywhere. So that way, when you got that message from your dispatch or from your ops crew, you could translate it and take a look at where those subs are at and make a totally different social media message that actually makes sense.
Yep. Yeah. I mean, again, just doing things to think like a member, think like a consumer, to translate what you're hearing, because you might understand what SCADA is telling you, but you can't expect anybody else to. That's why they hire us, right? That's why we're here. To help interpret for folks. Here's another good example of that, where folks were just pushing out a message that they got instead of thinking like the consumer. So this is in Texas. Texas has their own grid system, right? We've talked about this a lot with all the chaos that happened in Texas in February. And so they get power within a closed grid, and that's called ERCOT. So ERCOT was saying, hey, energy conservation, we're sending out this alert. And they just push that straight back out to their consumers. But then this example I thought was much better, because as a consumer, I don't know who ERCOT is. I don't care, right? But this co-op also in Texas, this is the same instance. They said, hey, there's a conservation alert. They explain who ERCOT is. You might not even need to say that. But they say, hey, they're asking us to use less power this time to this time on these days, and this is what you can do. So you're empowering folks. You're actually helping to educate them and inform them about something that's happening, right? So it's just being relatable, giving folks action steps, right? Instead of just pushing news out, can be super helpful. The biggest thing to remember, though, is to make sure that your content is easy to understand. Please, please, please do not use big words. You do not need to use big words. People laugh at me, but like my daughter is 6 now and we count syllables when we're working on words. And I really wish sometimes people would use syllables when working on press releases and on social media posts and keep it to 2 syllables or less. It's not about dumbing content down, it's making it approachable. So, Amy, talk to us about how to be savvy with social media. I mean, we've shown some examples, scared folks a little bit, hopefully not too much, but what should they do?
Sure. Yeah. Let's dive in. So how many posts, when to post, and what to post? Quality over quantity. You don't need to be posting several times throughout your day to get folks' attention. What does matter is the quality of your content. Like we talked about, is it entertaining? Is it engaging? That safety message that we just looked at about the life jacket and the two folks on the jet ski. I mean, the post could have been, make sure you wear your life jacket on the water. Instead, they changed it to a much more fun and engaging post. And that's a quality post. When are members online? This is something that's important for you to know. When are folks on their devices or on their computer looking at social media? And all that information is in your hands. You can go to your Facebook analytics, and you can go to your Instagram and Twitter analytics and take a look. So yep, here is what Pioneer Social has seen for all of our clients from all the data that we've gathered. So you have your best days for each social platform. You have your best time. Facebook, it's in the evening. Twitter, it's in the morning, that isn't surprising to me. It's kind of a more quick, easy, digestible, you might scroll it for a few minutes. Instagram, 11 a.m. I thought people were working at 11 a.m., but I guess they're on their Instagram feed checking out what everybody's posting about.
Working and checking Instagram at the same time. It's fine.
Right. But obviously for us communicators, we are working on Instagram. So, but anyways, into the next slide, Megan, that graph gives an example of how you can see through your Facebook page insights the time of day that everybody is online looking at Facebook. And that graph right there shows 7 o'clock.
Yeah. So, and that makes sense because while I might check Instagram at 11, Facebook, I don't really have time to dive into it until pretty much the end of the day or first thing in the morning sometimes. So evenings, it makes sense if you think about when people get home.
Yep. And find connections. It's not about you. Think like a member. Seems obvious, but we tend to forget that sometimes, right? As we go about our day-to-day as being a communicator and writing messages, and sometimes with social media, you just want to kind of quick get through your post and write them, get them on there. Yeah. But remember to think like a member, deliver value, build your community. And I think there's one more in there. Oh, yep. Megan. Okay. Yes. But Megan, tell me about that picture. That picture is so awesome.
See, it's again, it's thinking like a member and thinking about what will help connect your story with theirs, right? So at Pioneer, our co-op was built to share your story. And we love doing that and seeing examples of stories that are told that can be really powerful. This image was shared by PG&E. They had wildfires going on. They had lawsuits. They had people railing against them. They were so mad at them. And they took a moment to try to share another side of the story and to humanize their crews, right? This is a new dad. And it's just such a powerful image of who the line workers are beyond just someone to yell at, right? Stories can have a lot of power in how people perceive you. You can share the wonder of the area that you serve. I follow Jeff at Clearwater, not just because he's fun, but because his images have such power. And he has built this amazing community of folks in Idaho who love to see pictures reflecting where they live. Like there's a lot of pride in where they live, and he's created a community around that. He also does really silly things. He's a Lego maniac. And so he makes these builds for whether it's April Fools or throughout the year. He just makes these crazy Lego builds, and it's a personal passion of his, and he uses them on his social channels. He finds funny things that he shares with folks. And all of us have these stories in our backyards. Our line workers are seeing this stuff in the field, but are you asking for them to share those stories with you? And are you thinking about what matters to members? Again, putting yourself in their shoes, as Amy was saying, thinking like a member, why should they care? What motivates them? Jobs are always going to motivate folks. I don't know if you've noticed that, but they will share job postings. They will help you because they all know somebody that needs a job, right? And the utility job is one of the best jobs in the community a lot of the times. So you can find things like that matter to them. Now, Amy, you shared this with me and you said this is a recent post that is just gaining a lot of traction. Why does this matter to members?
Sure. So this is Missouri statewide Facebook page, and the hurricane that just hit, in September, down in Louisiana in that area, they had a lot of mutual aid that came in from other states. So Missouri sent a lot of folks down there, and the whole mutual aid topic is so engaging on everybody's pages. We see that time and time again, and we always try to help out our communicators with making sure we get those messages out during a mutual aid time, because they're so engaging. People just love to see that, oh my gosh, my co-op, they're going down to the coast to help with this major hurricane restoration that I've heard all over the news. That's awesome. And they share it and they like it. I mean, you can see there was 153 shares on that post. Just really, really awesome content.
Yeah, connecting your story with what folks are hearing about in the headlines is a really effective way of joining the bigger conversation and showing why you are special.
Yeah.
And this is another post that you found that, I mean, it has 132 shares.
Yeah. So, and this is a great example of a very engaging post too, the way it was written, right? This is our folks down in Florida at Peace River Electric Cooperative. And the way the post is written, teachers, would $500 help in your classroom? Don't forget to submit an application. We could have wrote that in a way of, Peace River Electric Cooperative is giving away a scholarship to a teacher. It's just tweaking your content or your copy just a little bit to resonate with, oh, I'm a teacher. Oh, then I see $500. And your members, they know teachers, and so they're more apt to share it. That post had 132 shares on it.
That's crazy. That's crazy. So, but yeah, it's just connecting with something that matters to them.
Yeah.
Here's a scary truth, Amy, and I hope folks get this, because we've said this a couple times now. But your social content is not about you. It's not about me. It's not about Amy. Everything that the Pioneer Social team creates is about your members, your consumers, right? It's not about you. And too often, I think we're told, hey, we need to talk about this. We need to post about that. Can you get that out? And we push it out without thinking about who we're writing it for. But it's not about us. We have to think like our members, like our consumers. So we're hoping that this has helped spark some ideas. I know we've got a question in the web chat. If you have more questions, pop them in there and we'll go through them in just a minute. But I just want to remind y'all, as we get ready for Sunday and the parade of trick-or-treaters and all the candy shoots, etc., the scariest thing of all for your members, for your consumers, for the folks at the end of the lines, for the folks that you serve at your telco, at your electric utility, the scariest thing for them is when you're silent. And it makes sense. In every scary movie, the soundtrack goes down and then there's just like this stillness. But there's so many folks that don't listen when their consumers are trying to connect with them, whether it's on Google My Business through reviews and questions there. It might be on your social channels. It could be in community groups where they just assume you're listening. That silence is the deadliest thing you can do. It's like what splitting up in a haunted house. Don't do that, right? We know what happens in that kind of story. When you're silent, you're taking yourself out of your member's story, and they have to figure out the story for themselves. And that's not going to look pretty a lot of the time. So I hope that this has been helpful for y'all. Amy and I love being able to be with you guys. Now, Amy, this is your first webinar.
It is.
Did you have fun? Hopefully.
This was super fun.
Yeah.
And Megan, you're super fun. This was awesome to be with you, and just the perfect time of year too to make it a little bit more fun with the Halloween theme.
I mean, it's good. Now, we did have a couple questions that were in here that I do want to make sure we address. Nicole asked, she said, I understand Facebook is rolling out a new change to business pages as well. Again, I love changes on social media. It's what keeps me up at night. She said something about likes going away and it will just be followers, but the conversion may cause us to lose some people. Have you guys heard about that, Amy?
I have not. That doesn't mean that there's not something being said about it. I mean, I kind of hear rumors all the time about, oh, Facebook may do this or that. But unfortunately, we don't know until Facebook makes the change usually. So
Right.
yeah, so we'll keep an ear on the ground and see what happens.
Well, and Nicole, we can always do a quick search too to see if we can find that question. I know there are a couple sources I always go to, and I do know a couple years ago, again, this is part of that organic reach. You used to reach everybody that liked your page. And then Facebook changed their policies a little bit, and you didn't have to like a page to see content. And that had an impact on utilities a lot. So I know that the Pioneer Social team, Amy, you and Melissa and the whole team there often will tell folks to focus on reach, not likes. And I don't know that that would change even if folks didn't have to like your pages anymore. They haven't been required to engage with your content for a while. So I think it's just going to underscore the importance of finding ways to boost your reach.
Yes,
So,
reach and engagement.
Yeah. I'm going to see, and we've got some comments from Melissa. So Nicole, if you look in the chat, Melissa is sending you some responses as well. We are able to add your business manager account to your Pioneer Social account if you're one of our members there, so you can receive notifications in the same place as your inbound content, which is fantastic. And Facebook is researching the changes, but they haven't decided what they're going to do yet with regards to likes. So this is why I love Melissa's not on the webinar with us, but she's with us in the chat, which is even better because she's answering all of y'all's questions there, which is wonderful. So I think that should be everything. But if you guys have any other questions, we are always ready to help. We love serving you at Pioneer, your communications cooperative. If you have ideas for future web content that you would enjoy, or if you have something that you're really proud of that you'd like to share with other utility pioneers, please let us know. We are here to share your story. All right. I think with that, Amy, anything else? Are we good?
Happy Halloween, everybody, and thanks
Happy
for
Halloween. Have candy. Have fun this weekend and keep sharing your story.